You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy explosives, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness!
Welcome back to another episode of Midlifers, Department of Holga and Analog Research Material Applications, also known as the DHARMA initiative. Ian, cue the flashback. Welcome back to another episode of Midlifers. So we have the Polaroid I-2 cameras here. If you don't know, actually it's been having exposure issues. You can watch our previous video. We highlighted how the internal meter is a bit off. Alright, so this camera here has received a new firmware update. It supposedly fixes all the exposure issues. So let me get our tripod and then we're going to set up a scene right behind me, right there. So this is a Small Rig's new tripod, okay? It has nothing to do with the fact that we forgot to bring our Aka Swiss plate. I think you saw the flashback. So we tested actually the unofficial new firmware that Polaroid is going to release for the I-2. We were quite fortunate to receive the firmware to test. So we had two I-2 cameras and we actually tested it indoors. So the EV values in that scene were quite low. And if you looked at our previous little video or flashback, you'll notice that we didn't really see any big difference. So we contacted those who sent us the firmware and asked them about what's the difference, you know, because we thought they're gonna be like better exposures with the new camera, or rather the new firmware, but we didn't really see anything. So we heard back from them and they mentioned that actually the new firmware update actually helps to expose better in brighter scenes. So we recreated the scene indoors again. We made sure the EV values were at least EV12, and then we recreated all the shots. We're gonna recreate a scene indoors so the light remains more or less consistent. I have my Sekonic light meter here and I'm actually going to meter it. So we're getting f8 at 1/500, which should be about, I guess, EV12 and above. We're going to take some images in aperture priority mode of using both cameras on black and white film, their new emulsion. And we're going to see the results and see if there's really any difference, because our previous test actually shows that there's no difference in the new firmware. And these are our images, these are our results. So we took two shots with the old firmware, okay? So the F at f22 and f64, then if you look at both images side by side, you'll notice that the old firmware tends to overexpose when the EV values are quite high. So if you shoot these images outdoors with the old firmware, you'll notice that they all come out overexposed. We recreated the shot with the updated firmware as well. Mind you, this is the unofficial one. We don't really know whether you'll get this or it'll be even further improved. But looking at the images themselves at f22 and f64, we notice that there is a marked difference. There's a significant improvement on the new emulsion. The colors not the colors, but the exposure seems a lot better. There's less images that are blown out. It's no longer as bright as previously. We decided to do the test on all the aperture stops like what we did in our previous video, just to see whether the latitude is the same as well. So once we did a testing on a f8, f22 and f64, we realized that nowadays the new firmware seems to expose all three images very, very close to one another. But if, let's say, you take the f8 and f64 images and you put them side by side, you will still notice a slight difference. f8 still tends to overexpose ever so slightly. f64 tends to underexpose ever so slightly, but it's way better than the original firmware. I think when Polaroid releases this firmware, please do update the camera. It seems to be a lot better for outdoor shots. However, if you're shooting indoors, you're using a tripod, or if you realize your EV values fall below 12, then you might still want to use an external light meter. The camera still falters in indoor environments. We'll show these images that I took indoors in an EV6 or 7 environment. You'll notice that the old and new firmware more or less perform similarly. So indoors, still continue to use a light meter to meter the scene as accurately as possible. Outdoors, bright sunlight, you don't have to worry. Just stick to zero exposure compensation and more or less all your images are gonna appear well. Okay, so this firmware that you're gonna receive probably is gonna be improved. This firmware that we're using is an unofficial release. It's only gonna get better. So when you can, do update it, and you will see marked improvements in your exposures on the i2. Of course, our channel is not just about Polaroid images. We do take part in a lot of things. We do have an interest in a lot of things. So the next few episodes, we'll probably cover a bit more on printing. I think we will also dabble a little bit more on scanning as well, so that we can have nice printed images. Ian recently got a new printer and he's been printing a lot of images. So I think a lot of you will look forward to the future episodes. So if you love this episode, or you feel there are certain areas of photography or anything in general you want us to cover, just comment it down below and I'll see you in the next episode of Midlifers.